many other...
This is right, Arab.
Hello and welcome to WION live broadcast from London. I'm Laura Macon-Isherwood, and in this bulletin we'll get you updates on stories developing around the world. First, let's take a look at the headlines.
Biden announced this agreement that until 31st of August they would withdraw all their military forces.
The Taliban warns that the deadline of the 31st of August for the withdrawal of international troops from Afghanistan is a red line, and that no extension should be allowed. This as Western powers continue to evacuate at pace. G7 leaders are set to hold a crucial meeting on the Afghanistan crisis on Tuesday. Sources say Britain plans to push world leaders to consider imposing new sanctions on the Taliban and to withhold aid if the Taliban commits human rights abuses. Amid the chaos at Kabul airport, one Afghan guard is killed in a gun battle between unidentified gunmen and US, German and Afghan guards. Ahmad Massoud, leader of Afghanistan's last major outpost of anti-Taliban resistance, says that talks with the Taliban are the only way forward. This as the Taliban claims hundreds of its fighters were heading to the Panjshir Valley, one of the few parts of Afghanistan not yet controlled by the group. Turkey steps up efforts to block a refugee influx from Afghanistan into the country. Turkish President Erdogan says that it cannot bail out the EU by taking in Afghans who worked for Western countries in Afghanistan. "22 people killed and several still missing after record-breaking rain lashes the US state of Tennessee. The National Weather Service said that up to 17 inches of rain fell in just 24 hours, as they feared the death toll could still rise. The G7 group of advanced economies is set to meet on Tuesday to discuss the crisis in Afghanistan. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson currently leads the group that includes the United States, Italy, France, Germany, Japan and Canada. In the wake of the Taliban's swift takeover of Afghanistan, Britain is planning to push world leaders to consider new sanctions on the Taliban. If the Taliban commits human rights abuses and allows its territory to be used as a haven for terrorism, then Britain believes the G7 should consider economic sanctions and withhold aid. British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab first raised the possibility of sanctions to pressure the Taliban last week, but diplomats believe sanctions are unlikely to be adopted immediately. US President Joe Biden, who has already held bilateral talks with UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, French President Emmanuel Macron and Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi, was asked whether he would support Britain's push for sanctions if the Taliban committed abuses, to which he said the answer is yes, it depends on the conduct. The extension of the presence of US troops in Kabul is also likely to feature prominently in discussions at Tuesday's virtual G7 meeting. America has set a deadline to complete the airlifts from Afghanistan by August the 31st. Boris Johnson plans to push Biden to extend that deadline so that more people can be evacuated. Allies, including the UK, have suggested they would support extending that deadline. For more details, let's go across live to WION correspondent Panjshir now. Panjshir, why is Boris Johnson leading this push for the US to extend its military presence in Afghanistan?
Panjshir go.
Sorry about that disconnection from Benji there. We'll move on to our next story now. In Afghanistan, the Panjshir Valley in the north of Kabul is now the final major centre of resistance to the Taliban. Since the Taliban overran Afghanistan, flickers of resistance have begun to emerge, with some ex-government troops gathering in Panjshir. And to suppress the uprising, hundreds of Taliban fighters are now heading to the valley. The group wrote on its Twitter account that its forces are heading towards the state of Panjshir to control it after local state officials refused to hand it over peacefully. Since the Taliban took control of the country, thousands of people have made their way to Panjshir, where now newly absorbed personnel in Afghan security forces are taking part in military training. A handful of armoured Humvees have also been seen driving across the valley. The Panjshir has long had a reputation as a bastion of resistance. Assassinated commander Ahmad Shah Massoud had successfully defended it during the Soviet-Afghan War and the civil war with the Taliban up to his death in 2001. Today, his son, Ahmad Massoud, has sought to assemble a force of around 9,000 people to counter the Taliban forces. Massoud, who is leading the last major outpost of anti-Taliban resistance, hopes to hold peaceful talks with the Islamist movement that seized power in Kabul a week ago. However, he said his supporters were ready to fight if Taliban forces, which have so far stayed out of Panjshir, tried to invade. During an interview, Massoud said that his group is defending the whole country in one province. Appealing to the West for support, Massoud has called for an inclusive, broad-based government in Kabul, representing all of Afghanistan's different ethnic groups, adding that a totalitarian regime should not be recognised by the international community. He has also vowed not to surrender areas under his control to the Taliban.
We are not fighting a geography. We are not fighting one province. We are defending the whole country in one province. That's what's happening, and we want to make Taliban realize that the only way forward is through negotiation and talk. And we are talking to them, and we do not want war to break out and to happen. And we want the Taliban to realize that these values that I just mentioned, it's more important than anything else, than any sort of military victory. Well, one thing is that to emphasize is that we asked for international community for reconciliation and for helping with the peace process as soon as possible, for stopping this catastrophe and this problem. And if it doesn't happen, if the war breaks out, in that scenario, of course, that international community should take side with Afghans and should not recognize an illegitimate government which is not in favor of Afghanistan in the region and the world. I am in my sanctuary, I am in my stronghold, Panjshir Valley. The people of Panjshir Valley are very much united, and they want to defend, and they want to fight, and they want to resist against any totalitarian regime, against any belief that wants to enforce their own belief and ideology upon the people. The people in here are just a small portion of the people of Afghanistan. In the geography of Panjshir is the smallest province in the whole Afghanistan. But what we are standing for right now, it's for the whole country. It's for sovereignty, it's for peace, it's for people, it's for inclusivity and tolerance and acceptance and moderation.
United States President Joe Biden, who is already under fire at home and abroad, once again fielded questions on the ongoing crisis in Afghanistan. Biden has repeatedly defended his decision to withdraw troops. He said that he hopes to finalise the evacuations of tens of thousands of people by August the 31st. Biden also raised concerns over the threat posed by the Islamic State group as American troops evacuate thousands of US citizens and Afghan allies from Kabul.
But we're under no illusions about the threat. I said on Friday, ISIS-K is a sworn enemy of the Taliban, and they have a history of fighting one another. But every day we have troops on the ground. These troops and innocent civilians at the airport face the risk of attack from ISIS-K from a distance, even though we're moving back the perimeter significantly.
Well, as chaos at Kabul airport worsens, Biden reassured that US forces have managed to improve access to the airport for Americans and others seeking to get onto flights. The US president added that America had evacuated nearly 28,000 people since August the 14th. This figure includes those in both US and coalition aircraft, bringing the total number of people evacuated since July to around 33,000.
Let me be clear. The evacuation of thousands of people from Kabul is going to be hard and painful, no matter when it started, when we began. It would have been true if we had started a month ago or a month from now. There is no way to evacuate this many people without pain and loss of heartbreaking images you see on television. It's just a fact. But to move out 30,000 people in just over a week, that's a great testament to the men and women on the ground in Kabul and our armed services.
Seeking to step up the pace of departures of Americans and at-risk Afghans from Kabul, the United States has enlisted the help of 6 commercial airlines to help transport people after their evacuation from Afghanistan. 18 planes will now help transport evacuees from safe cities outside Afghanistan.
The U.S. on Sunday ordered 6 commercial airlines to help transport people evacuated from Afghanistan, as Washington sought to step up the pace of departures of Americans and at-risk Afghans from Kabul. The Pentagon said it called up 18 commercial aircraft from United, American, Delta, and 3 other airlines. The airlines would not be flying into Kabul, but collecting passengers from temporary locations around the globe. The move highlights the difficulty Washington is having in carrying out the evacuations following the Taliban's swift takeover, and marks only the 3rd time the U.S. military has employed civilian aircraft. Thousands of people remained outside the Kabul airport on Sunday, hoping to be evacuated as Taliban gunmen beat back crowds. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan told CNN on Sunday that the U.S. has, quote, secured the capacity to get large numbers of Americans safe passage through the Kabul airport and onto the airfield, but gave no details. And U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken told CBS's Face the Nation that the U.S. is trying to ensure safe passage to the Kabul airport through what he called a working relationship with the Taliban.
They are in control of Kabul. That is the reality. That's the reality that we have to deal with.
Asked if the Taliban takeover also poses an increased terror threat, Blinken said the U.S.'s ability to combat terrorism has increased since the attacks of September 11, 2001.
If this threat reemerges in Afghanistan, we'll deal with it.
U.S. President Joe Biden on Tuesday will meet virtually with the G7 leaders to coordinate policy, discuss evacuation efforts, and humanitarian assistance in Afghanistan.
Amid an escalating crisis in Afghanistan, Turkey has stepped up efforts to block any refugee influx into the country. Thousands of Afghans who managed to make the long journey on foot to the Turkish border now face a 3-metre-high wall, ditches or barbed wires. Fearing a new refugee crisis, Turkey beefed up border measures as the Taliban made advances and ultimately captured Afghanistan's capital, Kabul.
3-metre walls mounted with barbed wire, 4-metre deep ditches, a military patrol. This is what Afghan refugees who make the weeks-long journey through Iran on foot to the Turkish border have to face. Fearing a new wave of migrants, Turkey began stepping up security measures along its border in recent weeks, as the Taliban began advancing in Afghanistan. Security forces watch out for any movement on the Iranian side, and patrol cars on the border are driving round the clock to push back fleeing refugees.
Our Coast Guard will maintain the security on Lake WION. We have been given orders by our minister and our president to protect our country against this migration wave and not to let anyone cross the border. We are on duty in coordination with all our units.
Those who manage to get past the security are brought to a detention center. They have their fingerprints and photographs taken and go through various security checks.
What motivation could we have? We had our own homes and lives there. When the Taliban came, we fled. We fled because they would have killed us there. We are not crazy to leave behind our whole life and come here for nothing.
The Turkish president has urged European countries to take responsibility for the Afghan refugees. He has emphasized that Turkey will not become Europe's migrant storage unit. The country already hosts more than 4.5 million refugees.
Turkey does not have a duty, responsibility or obligation to be Europe's migrant storage unit. Once we strongly close our borders and send the current irregular migrants home, it is up to them to decide where they will go.
The UN Refugee Agency estimates that over 250,000 Afghans have been displaced since January. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Niloufar Bayat, the captain of Afghanistan's women's wheelchair basketball team, along with her husband, has managed to escape Kabul, with the pair being evacuated in a military aircraft. Although the two have arrived in Spain, they say that the days spent at the Kabul airport were some of the worst they have ever experienced in Afghanistan.
This is Niloufar Bayat. When she was 2, her family's house in Kabul was hit by a rocket, injuring her spinal cord. She lost her brother in the attack. Despite all the adversities she has faced throughout her life, Niloufar, the captain of Afghanistan's women's wheelchair basketball team, says the days spent at the Kabul airport after the Taliban took over were the worst she has ever experienced.
We came with a military plane. It was for the first time for us that we could fly with a military airplane. Yeah, there was some difficulties that we had. We were about 2 days and 2 nights in the airport, Kabul airport, that it was the toughest day. It was too worse because entering to Kabul airport was not easy. It was really dangerous for everyone. It was really tough. That's why when we were trying to enter, there was a lot of Taliban and they were not allowing us to go, and they were shooting around when they were beating us, and they beat Ramesh and me, and I scared a lot. And we lost the luggage, everything that we had, but fortunately, we could find a way to go to from the gate of military, and army of Spain could help us, and they took us to Dubai, then we came to Madrid.
She even documented her experience of being evacuated from Kabul. Niloufar and her husband stayed at the Kabul airport for 2 days, braving difficult conditions, beating and gunshots.
From yesterday, I'm trying to go out of my country. Unfortunately, I have to leave because there is no way for me, and there is no future for me and for my husband to stay here.
Now we are in the airport, and it was really hard to enter here, and I cried a lot. Because I afraid, and because still Taliban are shooting around, and it's too difficult. They are shouting, they don't hear what we say. We had a very difficult time, but now fortunately I'm here with Ramesh and just sitting, and we are waiting to come here. I hope to see you all very soon.
Niloufar Bayat and her husband arrived in Spain over the weekend. They say they are worried about their families back home.
Because Taliban now started to check every home to find something to ask them, like if you have someone be journalist, someone working with the government, someone be in military, or someone be activist, or you have a girl that she was active or she was working outside. They want to just find something from them home and then they punish. It's really hard.
They arrived in the Torrejon de Ardoz airbase with 100 other refugees before heading to Bilbao.
We never thought about that one day Taliban will take the control of Kabul. Sometimes we were speaking, but Ramesh was telling me, don't worry, they cannot come to Kabul. But one day when in the morning we went to office, we were together, and I said, today everywhere look different. And at 10, my brother called that Taliban come to where we live. And we said, no, it's impossible. And my brother said, yeah, of course, they came to Kabul.
Like Niloufar Bayat, many other Afghan women are desperate to escape. They fear that the Taliban will reverse all the achievements that the country has made in the last 2 decades. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
A scuffle broke out at London's Guildhall between climate change activists and security personnel. Extinction Rebellion, a group of climate change activists, began 2 weeks of protests focused on London's financial district. Around 200 activists gathered outside and targeted the medieval Guildhall, the home of the City of London Corporation, which governs the city's financial centre. 3 activists climbed up the facade of the ornate Guildhall. The group has been demanding an emergency response from the government to avert the worst climate change scenarios outlined by scientists.
Next, we give thanks to all the great pianists of nations. Today, from the love and the light in us that connects us to all creation,
The Colombian city of Medellin was in full bloom as scores of florists gathered at the city's stadium for a colourful flower festival. The annual festival goes back to 1957 and has evolved to become a prized event on Colombia's cultural calendar. Many of the arrangements this year drew inspiration from the pandemic. The traditional parade was called off in 2020 due to coronavirus spread. We'll leave you with these visuals. Thanks for watching WION.
With a lot of joy, because after almost 2 years without the parade, the people are very happy to have the festival back again here as well as in the other parts of the world.
Celebrating life after such difficult times through our heritage, that is Sileteros. This tradition has seen participants in the parade for over 64 years, and today it is exciting for the city. From different parts to the city, we celebrate this, our heritage.
I'm very happy to be a Siletera. To take this tradition forward, I have been a farmer since birth. I'm very happy to participate in 2021. Last year we participated, it was something private because of the pandemic.
This is right, Arab.